Damas y caballeros, welcome back to another episode of From Across the Pond with your host, Raipul Mula. With me today to provide insight analysis of NC Cincinnati is Brad Weigel from Cincy Soccer Talk, a great show that you can find on YouTube as well as all your podcast providers. So thank you for coming on, Brad. And as a fan of the NFL, if you're fans of the NFL, you know the Bengals have shocked the league and are playing in the Super Bowl on Sunday. First of all, will they get it done? And how are you feeling ahead of that, Brad?
Oh man, who day? It's an exciting time to be from Cincinnati. You know, I was telling my brother-in-law, so we're not used to I don't know what to deal with all this success. You know, if your followers pay attention to FC Cincinnati, we've had 3 soul-crushing years. I'm 34 years old. This year was the first year in my life that I can remember the Bengals winning a playoffs. So it's exciting, a little bit scary. I'm actually feeling cautiously optimistic about the game this weekend. Joe Burrow is just absolutely amazing. He's the next face of the league, I think, now that Brady's retired. And I'm really looking forward to see what they do. Every single time they've said the Bengals are going to fall away from the moment, they've risen up, and now they're in the Super Bowl. So I'm looking forward to that, and hoping for a big party this weekend.
Yeah, and they offer maybe a glimmer of hope for FC Cincinnati in future years if you can put the right people in place and get the ball rolling that way. So obviously, unlike your Bengals fans, optimism and positivity hasn't been that easy to find in the FC Cincinnati fan base of recent time, especially during the time in MLS, due to a lack of organizational direction and poor results on the field and the messy decisions off it. The club's only played in the MLS for 3 seasons, and they've been at the basement wooden spoon side for all 3 seasons. They're already on their 6th different head coach, including the interim coaches. So with all those head coaches representing the possibility of a new beginning, but all burning out, why is this time different? What can the guys that have come from the Philadelphia Union offer?
That's a great question. And, even though we've had 3 terrible seasons so far, we've had a lot of hope, I want to say. It was kind of fool's gold hope. We've brought in big names. We've splashed all kinds of money. We brought in a big name coach in Jaap Stam of Manchester United lore, and it's FC Cincinnati's done a complete 180 this year. They've brought in, as you said, Chris Albright and Pat Noonan, general manager and head coach from the Union. Both were seconds in their roles, assistant general manager and assistant coach. But they brought MLS history. They're bringing the knowledge of what it's like to play in this league, what players are in this league, what travel is, how this game is different than, say, the international game, which Ron Jans and Jaap Stam were very much into. So I think they bring in some of those that wisdom, that knowledge. You might have a $2 million or $3 million salary player like Brenner or Lucho Acosta, and you know what? He might be supported by a $65,000 18-year-old. So I think those are some challenges that the past regimes didn't quite understand. So I'm a little bit hopeful on that wisdom and that knowledge and experience. Also, the staff that they've built with Dom Kinnear and Kenny Arena, who've got such a long time, MLS Cup winning pedigrees there. But I still think there is a long way to go this year, especially when it comes to building out that roster.
Yeah, but the Philadelphia, like you say, the Philadelphia Union kind of become a model club in the MLS alongside FC Dallas and the New York Red Bulls, the new sought after kind of model franchise in terms of building an academy and building a production line of players. And do you think that's something that we could foresee in Cincinnati in the coming years if they're allowed to grow in this system?
Sure. I think that work has already been laid into place. We've got a top of the line training facility. You're seeing our academies do very, very, very well in some of the rankings thus far in their short time with Larry Sunderland at the helm there. So I do think the groundwork is in place where we could start to see some academy kids. But I think the biggest thing that the Union did versus maybe, say, the Red Bulls, FC Dallas is turning out tons of kids. But I think the best thing that I like where I can cherry pick from Philadelphia is they've been able to take that pipeline and have had success. So I wouldn't say Dallas have had success on the field, but they've had success with, all the transfer fee checks that they're cashing. I think the Union have done a great job of bringing in experienced veterans that know the league or fit a role, and then they incorporate and give the young players a chance. And I think that's the biggest thing that I think I've seen FC Cincinnati miss the last 3 years, is having defined roles within their teams. The Unions, they played that 4-4-2 diamond. So both 8 midfielders knew exactly what their roles were supposed to do. Both forwards, fullbacks, they all had defined roles and responsibilities. And I want to just say it's almost been the last 3 years in FC Cincinnati has been so much change, so much turnover. There hasn't been a lot of stability, a lot of clear-cut direction. Like I said, I'm not sure Jaap Stam and Gerard Nijkamp, the old regime, knew the league. They didn't know what players could do what. And then I don't really believe that they were able to define those roles and give those players instructions. I think that's where the new head coach and staff are going to succeed. I think they're going to maybe bring that bar up a little bit. Now, I think the ceiling's still pretty low, but you got to start with building a nice solid foundation. I think that's what I'm looking for in the next 3 or 4 months as they continue to make more moves.
You talked about that system that they had in place in Philadelphia, everyone knowing their role. Do you see Pat Noonan bringing across that Jim Curtin kind of 4-4-2 diamond system with him? Because looking at the roster right now, I'm not sure if the players kind of fit that. There's a lot of wingers on this team. So is that something you see, or is it going to have to be tactical flexibility from Pat Noonan?
I think that's the $1 million question. We've been able to watch one preseason match so far, and they rolled out the 4-4-2 diamond. But you hit the nail on the head. There's really not 2 8s and a good 6 on this team. There's not a 6 on this team currently as it stands. And we're hoping to have a guy in Yuya Kuba, who's a converted striker, to play on one side of the midfield, which, he honestly, he didn't play horribly last year, but that's not his natural role. And then you're hoping to get Alan Cruz, who the first season was great, the last 2 seasons, not so much. Those are pretty much your only other midfielders. So if you want to play a 4-4-2 diamond, you need a lot of midfielders. And right now, this team was built for a 4-3-3. You got Alvaro Barrial, who's a winger, who, he might be able to shuttle in one of those midfield roles. We'll see. Isaac Atanga, a gentleman that they purchased last year, a speedster, definitely a winger. I don't see where he fits on this team at all. And, he's one of our U22 players, big transfer fee, expect a lot out of him, but I don't know where he fits if they're going to play the 4-4-2. So they've played it in the preseason. I kind of hope they have a plan B, or they get some new signings, because as it currently is situated, you are going to be having to convert players from their unnatural positions if they want to shoehorn them in this formation. So it depends on, do they want to take their early knocks and just play it to get the players who are going to be long-term used to it, or do they maybe settle with a 4-3-3 or something, which we saw them kind of morph into a little bit, which I honestly think in the short term they're going to have to employ more of.
Yeah, because like you said, Yo-Yo Kubu did a brilliant job last season, or did a good job last season in a converted role. But him and Harris Medunian in a midfielder ahead of this season is a scary prospect for FC Cincinnati, and not the opposition necessarily.
Yeah, definitely a slow midfield, especially when it comes to Harris. Harris played in that 6, a couple of years ago for the Union, but he was pinging long balls, distributing the ball. FC Cincinnati's biggest question mark this offseason has been, what are they going to do with that 6 role? Honestly, they've gotten worse. Caleb Stanko's not here. Kamahela Makocha's not here. They weren't great, but at least they were bodies. Right now, we've got Harris, who picked up a knock in the preseason, and that's it. There's nobody there. So I'm really not sure what they're going to do in the short term. I was hoping we were messaging when we could come on the show. I was hoping they were going to have some announcements. Nothing's happened yet. We still got a couple weeks till the season starts, but as it stands on February the 8th, I am significantly worried, because that was our biggest problem last year, and we have done nothing to address it.
Do you foresee, like you say, it's only 2 weeks until the season starts, so it's not likely that they, even if they get someone in, they can bed them in time to start at least the first couple of games. Do you see that coming in the summer transfer window being a massive priority for the time?
Oh my gosh. It was an emergency in January, so I don't know what it's going to be come July. If they don't get somebody in here, I forget when the window closes. I want to say it's probably something like April, but I am absolutely worried with with what's happening there, because we saw all last season teams could turn us over and there was nobody to stop them. Caleb Stanko was terrible. He was slow. Harris Medunian, and while I love him, his just time's caught up to him. He's 37 years old. And we've spent so much money on attackers just to have nobody there. It's really sad. And for us to not to be able to get any depth there at all from within the league, that gives me a lot of worry.
Like you said earlier, the new regime kind of raises the floor of the projections for this team. But obviously the midfield issues. Are you looking at maybe, not a wooden spoon type season, but not a playoff, a progression, but not quite playoff level?
So what's success look like?
Yeah,
I think that's being ahead of Charlotte at the end of the season. not in last place. So that's my honestly, I think that's the expectation of the fan base right now. It's not high. Thank goodness we got the Bengals to give us some hope that we know things can turn around. There's so many things that the club's done off the field, but golly, we need to see something on it. I'm really worried how that midfield shaping up.
One of the massive positives, maybe one of the only ones, is the stadium, TQL Stadium, beautiful soccer specific stadium. Hosted US men's national team game, women's national team game as well. So what does it mean for the club to have a soccer specific stadium, and what's the atmosphere like in there?
Oh, it's incredible. I don't know who you support over there, but
Everton, unfortunately.
Everton. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh, you got my boy Dele Alli. I'm a Spurs fan, but I liken it to it's just an awesome strategic advantage. Think about Spurs. Now they've got a large attendance base to draw off of for season tickets or revenue. So revenue you can use to spend players. That atmosphere is incredible. At FC Cincinnati games, the atmosphere has still been great, even if the team's lost. I haven't seen FC Cincinnati win at home in like 2.5 years. Like it's so sad, but it was so cool. And so like my arms just tingle talking about that USA versus Mexico game this year. And I can't wait till we can, have that success with FC Cincinnati, because it's so loud. There's a roof that overhangs the stadium. And so, it can rain and you can be in the front row and not get wet. But what that does is that keeps all that noise in there. So the Bailey's chanting, the fans are chanting, when there's positive things occurring, which is, been few and far between. But when that place gets up and rocking, I mean, it's incredible. And I think you ask anybody who traveled from across the country to that US men's qualifier, I mean, it was bonkers. And I can't wait till we can show that off with a successful team. And, honestly, just make it one of the best places to play in the country. I really do believe it's going to come down to like Cincinnati, Nashville, Seattle, in Atlanta as far as attendance and atmosphere goes.
Yeah, one of the pivotal players in order to bring success or more successful times to Cincinnati is Brenner. We often see in second seasons in the MLS, players have now adapted to, like you said before, the travel, the intensity of the league, the physicality, and they improve markedly on their first year. Do you see Brenner improving, and how important is it for Cincinnati that he gets above his 8 goals that he got last season?
Sure. Yeah, I do think he's going to have a better year. I don't think he had a bad year last year. Now, 8 goals doesn't justify that $15 million transfer fee that the former general manager. I just think he just well overpaid. I think he had the money that the owner said yes, didn't know any better, and so he just paid whatever it took to get him. But I do think Brenner's going to have a good year. I think the way that the team is going to set up tactically, putting a strike partner up there, whether it's Dom Baji or Brandon Vasquez, I think that for him to be trotted out is really the lone striker was criminal. It was a poor use of his skill set. He needs somebody to play off of and finish. And honestly, it was so much of, I call it Lucho ball, hero ball, trying to get him and Brenner involved, like those two just trying to create something because there was nobody else to support him. And it wasn't selfishness when I say hero ball. Like they knew it was those two and that's it. I think if you can find a system where we're just not leaking goals left and right, where they have at least some sort of confidence behind them that the midfield and the defense can stop the opponents, I think that's going to allow another body or two to get up there. You're going to have Lucho sitting behind two forwards, one of them Brenner. And I think they have the talent there to have a successful offense. It's just what's behind him going to do, and will that allow them to succeed? And honestly, if they keep giving up goals and turning the ball over, it doesn't matter how great Brenner is if you can't get it to him.
No, absolutely. And like you say, behind them, they FC Cincinnati brought in a keeper. Obviously, he played in the MLS previously with LAFC. Kenneth Vermeer had international experience, but has been really awful in his time in MLS. How big a move this offseason was bringing in Alec Khan from Atlanta, who's had good moments in the USL, hasn't had too many opportunities in the MLS, but what can he bring to the side?
Yeah, great question. Not to pub another podcast, but Extra Time Raider, I'm sure you're familiar with those guys. They talked about FC Cincinnati on their preview show this week, and they brought up one of the biggest moves this season for FC Cincinnati was Alec Khan. And it's not because he's going to be, a superstar in the league. It's not like he's going to be an all-star or whatnot. But honestly, if he just gets us to league average in goal, that is a massive bump. That is a huge bump. Kenneth Vermeer, while he made some crazy saves, he was so far out of position all the time. And he just looked lost back there. And I think he was a keeper in his prime, had success just due to his raw athleticism. But now that's diminished. I think that now you're seeing him getting taken advantage of. There's a reason why LAFC got rid of him. They paid for him to go away. And so I don't really know why Nijkamp signed him, other than it was somebody Jaap Stam was familiar with from his old European days. But I'm glad Vermeer hopefully should be gone. Alec Khan, like I said, if he can just get to average, if he can avoid the catastrophes, if he can just make one save or two a game, if he ends up being a net 10 goals, that's massive for this team who gave up 70 goals last year. I mean, we're not going to go from 70 to 40, but you know what? If we can incrementally, if we can get a couple, with our right back situation, if that can help us stop conceding, 5 goals, if Khan can save a 10, you can start seeing some of the other guys. That's how you rebuild this club to just not be embarrassing and at least show up and think maybe you can get a result week in and week out.
Absolutely. Do you think, obviously, we talk about the need for midfield reinforcements. So do you think there's a need for more backline reinforcements? Obviously, Ray Gaddis came out of retirement, someone familiar to the new regime. Come in, maybe help the players that are currently there, learn the system, understand the system, a bit of leadership, professionalism. But is there a need for someone else more in their prime to come in that backline?
Well, I mean, I think if you just start on the back four, left back Ronald Matarrita, he's a starter for Costa Rica. If they make it, he'll be in the World Cup. Top left back in the league. Really feels solid at that spot. Now you have a little bit of depth behind him when they brought in John Nelson. The center back role was a miss and match of injuries, players coming in late. They never really got a ton of time to bed in with each other with Tyler Blackett, Gustavo Vallecilla, and Jeff Cameron. They're going to have an offseason. They're going to have more time together. I think the center back pairing there is just naturally going to get better. And then you got Nick Hagglund. Nick Hagglund's a decent fourth center back in Major League Soccer. Right back there, you did hit the nail on the head. You got Ray Gaddis coming out of retirement, who he was a really good right back 2 years ago, and then he retired, didn't play last year. Now he's back in. I think that familiarity, and the coaching staff liked him enough when what they saw. They gave him a 2-year deal there. If he can pick up from where he was in 2020, that would be huge. Alvis Powell, he's one of our first FC Cincinnati retreads. He was on the inaugural squad. Spent some time, I think went over to Sudan early last year and then came back and played with the Union the second half of the year. Coaching staff and front office like what they saw there. Well, now they're here. So I think for having Alvis Powell as a backup right back, not horrible. Would love a better piece at right back? Yes. But I think with what the ability they had and some of the roster flexibility or lack thereof, I think that's going to help a lot. Because honestly, last year you had Joe Zhao, who was a winger, was not great, and Zico Bailey, who is young, unproven. Honestly, he needs to be loaned out to the USL or something and just get time. He's not a bad player, but he's good on offense, not so great on defense. When a team that's shipping 70 goals, you need better defense. So I like what they've done there, but we know a defense isn't just the back four and the goalie. It's the midfielders, and if nobody's there to stop people running at them, doesn't matter how much they've improved, that's still going to be a tough ask.
No, absolutely. And like you were saying earlier, last year in 2021, it was kind of Lucho ball or nothing for FC Cincinnati. So I'm guessing you'd say he's the most important player. And he was very impactful last year. Some people doubted him after an underwhelming time in Mexico, after his DC United days where he thrived with Wayne Rooney. But so he fulfilled his role as a DP last year with 17 goal involvements. How confident are you that he can replicate that this year?
Yeah, I think Lucho was not the problem last year. Through all 34 games, the guy just put out heart. He tried. I think you asked most of the MLS pundits around the league. The guy had a really nice year on a absolutely abysmal team. So I think with Lucho, if you can give him some help, give him some support, because he's not going to play defense. He's not meant to play defense. You give him some help, and you give him another partner up there, just besides Brenner. I think he's going to pick apart teams. You see, if he gets moments and he gets familiar with his teammates and knows where they're going to run, he's going to make the pass, or he's going to try to make that pass and create opportunities. So I really think he's going to be the key to the offense this year. And he should. He's the best player, and I just hope we can bring the base up enough to support him.
Absolutely. And do you foresee any breakout players this year with the team?
Sure, it's hard to say he's a breakout player because he's technically classified as a DP right now. He spent time as a TAM. I think it will be Yuya Kubo. We've said it for a couple of years now, but I do like how he settled into the midfield role. And I think if he can play as an 8, but then get into the box as a late run, we saw him in the preseason last week. He had a banger from outside the box. He's had some great opportunities the last 2 seasons scoring from outside the box or setting up players. I really think, like I said, if you can support him, the guy has got so much talent and so much awareness. He's just, if Lucho had to do it all offensively last year, Yuya, who's a converted striker, had to do it all defensively, and that's not fair. You can't expect him to succeed that way. So I think you give him some support as well. Those 2 guys are ready to take off. They've got a ton of skill. People can see it. It's like FC Cincinnati's been a puzzle with some pretty pieces, but none of those pieces match. And Albright's job is to try to get those pieces to match. And you mentioned at the top of the show, what formation you're going to run out there? I don't know yet, but that's why I don't get paid the big bucks like Noonan to do so. But definitely experience there between Noonan and the coaching staff. So if it's going to be anybody, I think it's got to be Yuya.
Yeah, and like you said, okay, if we're heading towards the prediction time, Nashville have moved over to the Western Conference, bringing in inaugural Charlotte to the Eastern Conference. Obviously, inaugural teams in their inaugural season usually struggle. So where do you see them this year? In the MLS.
Realistically, it's going to be a battle not to get the wooden spoon again. I would love for them to not be last. What is that? 13th out of 14. I don't see them going much higher than that, unless Pat Noonan figures something out or we get some reinforcements this summer, which very well could happen. I think the big jump is going to be in 2023 for FC Cincinnati. You're going to see a ton of bad contracts come off the books. And so I think that's where you're going to see the jump. But if we can just establish a base that isn't terrible, you never know. It's Major League Soccer. Crazy things have happened, and teams just go on terrible streaks, just don't show up. What we saw with LAFC, what they were terrible last year. Crazy things have happened. Colorado goes and wins the Western Conference. Who called that? Nobody. But I think realistically, it's going to be something like 12th, 13th, or 14th.
And a competition that FC Cincinnati have good history in is the US Open Cup, obviously from the USL day, a massive run that kind of gave a launch pad to the FC Cincinnati moving to MLS. Are you happy to see that back? And is that going to be a good opportunity for FC Cincinnati to have a little run, have a bit of fun?
Oh my goodness, that was the coolest thing in the world, that run we did. What it would have been.
Was it 2017?
2017, 2018? It was 2017. It was our second season, wasn't it? Yeah. That was an absolutely incredible run. And the way the city came, to support this team. You're getting 35,000 people in Nippert Stadium, which is our local, UC football, college football playoff. There we go. But they packed that place out. So it's great to see that competition back. Whether FC Cincinnati is going to do well in it or not, it's another place to get more competition, more time for your players. I think that's one area that's hurt FC Cincinnati the last 2 years, is that we haven't had a place for our players who aren't playing regularly to go and play. So there was absolutely zero development within this club the last 2 years. So I'm happy to see that back. If we win it, I would absolutely love that, because I really want to play in Champions League and see some more clubs from across this continent. I just want to see us win games. Like I said, I haven't seen that. We didn't get any home games in 2020, and I didn't see any wins in 2021. So it's been since 2019 since I've seen a win in person. If it takes the Open Cup to do it, man, I'm glad. But I'm glad. It's the magic of the cup. It's so cool to see all the stories you hear. FC Cincinnati, I firmly believe if they didn't have that run and that tremendous showing, I don't think they would have gotten into MLS as easily.
No, absolutely. And fingers crossed you get the win soon in the season, hopefully one of the first few games. I just want to say, Brad, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, and hopefully we speak again soon.
Yeah, man, you ever come across the pond, man, make a visit to Cincinnati. I know some people call it flyover country here, but there's so much cool stuff going on. And within Cincinnati, you can be at 5 or 6 MLS clubs in a matter of 5 to 8 hours. So yeah, but I appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Take care.